Welcome and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Application Performance Management. I'm Mark Smith on the Government Marketing team and I'm hosting today's event. We'll get started in a moment, but first let's cover a few housekeeping items. The webcast is being recorded and will be sent out in a few days along with the slides. Phones are muted and participants are encouraged to type questions into the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen. Our speakers today are Pete DiStefano and Mike Morgan from our APM team. They're covering today's content. Pete, please take it from here.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good afternoon to everyone. Appreciate everyone taking their time today. As Mark said, my name is Pete DiStefano. I'm on the product marketing team and work with Mike Morgan. Mike is the technical brains of the outfit. So I'm going to take you through some slides today, and then Mike's going to actually take us through the products. So what I'm going to be sharing today is I'm going to do a very quick overview of SolarWinds, and then I'm going to try to put into context application performance management. How does that fit within the SolarWinds portfolio? And then we're going to talk a little bit more about why is APM even important, and why is it important now? Then we're going to break it in to two different areas. You see the three products that are listed on the side, the right side of this slide. There's the server side of application performance management, and today we'll be talking about AppOptics and Loggly. And then there's the client side of APM, which is a very important part of APM. And today we'll be talking specifically about a product called Pingdom. Again, after about 20 minutes of listening to me go on, more importantly, we're going to switch over to Mike Morgan. He's going to actually take you through the products and kind of show you a lot of the capabilities and the use cases that I'll talk about here during this presentation. My own personal opinion is if a session's any good, it's because people have engaged. So, I'm going to take it very specific that if I've done my job well and we've kind of enlightened you, we provided some value in what we share, that you're going to ask questions because you're going to want to know a little bit, hey, what about this? What about that? So I really do encourage you at any point in time, fire the questions into the Q&A, as Mark said, and then we will absolutely do our best to answer those questions at the end of the session. All right, let's get going here. So let me just real quick, SolarWinds has been around a little over 20 years. We're a pretty formidable company. For those of you who are either customer of ours or worked with us before, you probably already know that. We are headquartered in Austin. We've got offices around the world. We started out, quite frankly, in the network management space years ago, but since then have become a force in systems management. We have over 60 IT management products. We continue to grow different disciplines like our security portfolio. And really, some of the leadership we brought to the table, it's all related to the IT professional. And I'll talk about that in a moment. If you're not familiar with something called THWAC, that crazy name, THWAC is the name of our global IT community. If you never do a thing with SolarWinds, I really suggest you become a THWAC member because you'll be able to engage with thousands of IT professionals like yourself. You could talk to each other. You could share problems. You can get help understanding how certain things are being done. It truly is a great community for sharing and engaging. And I'll tell you right now, most of what we do and what we build comes from talking to our customers, listening, and THWAC is a very big part of that. So I really encourage you to take a look at that. Again, we have lots of customers, 320,000 across the globe. We have solutions for the IT professional for small, mid-sized companies up through some of the largest companies in the world. And as you can see, our managed service business, and probably really important here, whether you're government or state, local, federal, whatever, but every branch of the DoD and just about every civilian and intelligence agency is a SolarWinds customer. So just thought we'd kind of bring that up as well. Bringing great products that simply work. I mean, it's simple, and so it might be a little overstated, but as I mentioned, Our focus is solving well-known problems that IT professionals struggle with on a daily basis. You know, you've seen this term, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, this idea of being geek built. That's what we do. We build problems that solve very well-known problems for IT professionals. We sell to technologists. We build the products so for a technology professional, an IT professional, they can use it to solve problems. It's easy for them to purchase the product. They don't have to go through a lot of cumbersome planning. It's all about making it easy for the IT professional. And we continue to grow our offerings because the IT world continues to change. And we're going to talk about that as specific to APM. And whether it's the Orion platform and the products we've built into that, that some of you might already be aware of, to our MSP business, to the application management side, which today we're going to be talking about specific to the SaaS-based products in that portfolio. And as I mentioned earlier, security. So simple, powerful, affordable. You'll hear that mantra from just anyone who ever worked at SolarWinds. We grow with our customers, and that's just the way it works. We're not a company that's looking to kind of build the next thing and get people to jump on board. We are there with our customers in the trenches, solving those problems. One thing that has changed with this world is there is really no such thing as cloud only. And there's really no longer such thing as legacy or data center only. Now, if you're a newer company, okay, there's a good chance, yeah, you could have started off in the cloud. But if we're talking about federal, state, and local governments, we're talking about education. By definition, you are strapped with a set of legacy applications. And I shouldn't say strapped. They're very important to your business. But you're also now in the process of doing some things differently with some new modern applications. You will be in a hybrid environment. I find it hard. Matter of fact, I'd love someone to throw a chat in there saying, well, in our school or in our local municipality, we've decided to go all cloud. That's cool. But again, I think most of you are dealing with this hybrid world. So guess what? That's what we're focused on as a company, dealing with a hybrid world and giving you visibility regardless of what the IT implementation is. And then we'll talk more about this as we go along with regards to being application centric, because although we do everything from, looking at the wire and all the networking, everything we do, the infrastructure, whatever it is, it's all about supporting the application. Okay. Because that's where either the money is made or that's what is being used by your internal users to make sure the company can be successful. I won't get into all of the notable examples, but there are a variety of things we've brought to the table that have gotten quite a bit of visibility, and the capabilities they've brought to the table, whether it be from our network insights to the way we represent an application stack that shows all the components that make up an application. And by the way, you're going to get all of these slides. Okay. So don't worry about having to take a lot of notes here. Again, think about those great questions that are going to stump Mike and I. That's what I want you to focus on. But other than that, sit back and enjoy. Okay, before I talk about APM, look at that chart in the bottom right corner. It's basically a way to represent 60 products that we deliver in a variety of ways from SolarWinds. From the bottom, you got the network management set of products, infrastructure management, database management, application performance management. That's what we're going to talk about today. But we have IT security, and then we have a service management layer. Actually, I think the company's done a pretty good job of trying to help understand what SolarWinds brings to the table and categorize it in a way that I think you can consume it. Let's talk about application management. The most visible issues are application performance degradations, total outages. A frustrated user will have impact on a company. And that frustrated user can be an internal user that their use of IT can be critical to the success of a company. Or it could be an end customer, whether it's somebody who's, trying to renew their driver's license, or they're trying to sign up for a class. All of these things are critical. And let me tell you, there's been this shift. And this shift is just really caused a phenomenal change in how you as IT professionals have to live in this new world. And that's where APM comes into play. And I'm going to talk about that quite a bit here in a moment. But if you just take the application performance management pillar within SolarWinds, to the left, you'll see there's 5 products. Server and Application Monitor, or known as SAM. Many of you on this webinar either might have heard of SAM, you might even be a SAM customer. We're also going to be talking, today we're going to be talking about AppOptics and Loggly, both SaaS-based. So Server and Application Monitor is an on-prem, you install the bits in your data center, or you can install them in a private cloud. And by the way, there's some similarities and there's some very specific differences. So feel free to throw those questions into if you like, and we'll do our best to answer those. But today we're going to focus on our SaaS products. Web Performance Management, we actually have 2 products. Web Performance Monitor, which is a behind the firewall install, the software. And there's Pingdom, which again, it's SaaS-based. So it's a cloud-based product. So today, from our APM pillar, we're going to be talking about AppOptics, Loggly, and Pingdom. But again, all questions are fair game. So why is this a big deal? Why IPM? Why APM? Sorry. Well, Gartner is talking about, the growth is going to quadruple here by next year. IDC is now saying APM is business critical. And I'm not going to read all the words. Again, you'll get this and you'll have links to some of this data. But why is APM all of a sudden something that you absolutely have to have? Well, number one, and we're all dealing with this very bizarre world when the COVID virus happened. For a moment here, just forget that existed. Let's go back 3 months or however long. Let's go back to February before this happened. Even then, over the last couple of years, the dependence that companies, government organizations, state and local, the dependence that your users internally and your external customers have on technology continues to go up. And there's very few companies. I'm going to use this kind of silly example, but there was a little girl selling lemonade. Lemonade doesn't cost a nickel a cup like it did when I was young. And she had an iPhone, and she had one of those little cubes attached to her iPhone so you could use your credit card to buy lemonade. So even this little girl on the corner was using technology. My point really is, when we talk about the organizations that you're in, the dependence that your organizations are having on technology has never been higher, which puts more stress on you to keep these applications, these infrastructures up and running. Then you take modern technology that has presented all sorts of wonderful opportunities for building and maintaining and getting updates out quicker. But all of a sudden, you've got exponentially more moving pieces. You've got parts of an application running in different chunks across multiple infrastructures. You have legacy applications running. Now, all of a sudden, not only do I have the pressure to keep these systems running because they become a part of the fabric of the success of my organization, but now they're so much more complex. And of course, all your users, internal or external, are wanting more, and they want it faster. When you bring all these things together, I don't know if you want to call it a perfect storm, a perfect hurricane, or a tsunami, but boy, it's a challenge. Okay, and that's why APM has really started to become an absolutely have-to-have. Now, one of the things that was limiting it was the cost and the complexity. And I'm not going to go into any specific vendors right now, but if you go back a couple of years, there's tools that did a lot of the things that we're going to share with you today. But to the extent that companies can figure out how to make those APMs more cost effective because that pressure is even stronger than it ever was. And then if they can help provide intelligence to take the complexity out of monitoring this crazy environment I just talked about, that's where this thing really starts to kick off. And quite honestly, that's why we're actually starting to see a fairly significant ramp. So I'm going to quickly talk about two really simple use cases. It's not really detailed, but it'll give you an idea. The first use case for APM, and again, I know I've got product names here, but let's just talk about the use cases for APM. A lot of people think of APM and, oh, I've got to be able to troubleshoot with, my applications. So, if there's a problem, I could find out before the customer does. And then that's all true. But APM is just as valuable in a dev environment, in a test environment before you go production. So a product like an AppOptics, in addition to troubleshooting fast and bringing you to the root cause, we'll talk about that. By the way, that is very important, right? I want to be able to troubleshoot. I want to be able to find if there's a bug in my software before it goes live. The other thing I want to be able to do is make sure that before I go live, before I've got hundreds of thousands of customers, whether it be internal or external, hitting that application, I want to make sure that I have the application and the infrastructure that can support that. So being able to use a tool like an AppOptics to test and optimize the code before you go live, and of course to be able to troubleshoot bugs, because I think everyone who has any connection at all with application development knows that the cost of fixing a bug in the field is exponential to fixing it before it goes out the door. And that's before you even talk about the cost or the impact on the actual end user. Log management, which, in this case, Logly, the use case actually for production and for dev is pretty much the same. It's about troubleshooting. It's about being able to quickly get to the log lines that matter, the log lines that are associated with whatever issue you think you're having to get you to that final root cause. I use the term the evidence that, log management's kind of the evidence. Those log lines are the evidence, the proof, the final proof of what actually is going on. Now, Pingdom, or web performance monitoring, the use case for development is around synthetic tests. Being able to make sure, number one, that if I've got a fairly complex application and multiple endpoints, I can make sure that those are all functioning by running some synthetic tests. But then also being able to run synthetic transactions. So either testing the performance through simulating a transaction, because, I don't have any real transactions going on yet. So it's a great way to do some synthetic testing in a test environment. Or if I did have a bug and in the development environment and I go ahead and fix it, then I can run a synthetic test to validate that, that problem is fixed. So again, very high level. Here's an example where APM can be used in a dev environment. Next one, it's operations, but let's call it production. Same thing. It's like, okay, how do you use APM a little bit differently when we're talking about in production? Well, as I mentioned earlier with AppOptics, troubleshooting is still key, right? It's not just being able to troubleshoot quickly, but accurately, getting to the right root cause and getting to it in a way that it's not a real heavy lift. And actually, we'll talk a little bit more about leveraging other parts of APM to get to the root cause. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's really that troubleshooting across infrastructure, but it's also really monitoring performance, monitoring the impact. Like, what is the impact of the current infrastructure resources that have been given to this application? What is the impact they're having on an application? How is the application performing? Is it delivering the type of performance as it was designed before we went live? Being able to really become intimate with understanding how the application's running, whether it's in a down environment or not, but really understanding, hey, I'm getting this type of performance, and how does that compare to what my expectations were? As I mentioned, log management, it is troubleshooting. That's what log management is for. It's about being able to get all those logs into one place, being able to quickly go through and get to the log line that matters. With web performance monitoring, we do have kind of an additional capability here that is very important, and that's real user monitoring. Synthetic still is important being able to, again, test, make sure all the endpoints are running, and if one of the endpoints was to fail, you need to quickly understand that, because it just takes one of those endpoints to fail where the entire application is not usable. So being able to run synthetics to test endpoints, to test the URLs, APIs, etc., but then also to be able to run transaction tests on a regular basis. You take the key transactions for your applications, you create these, you can run them as fairly quickly, like every 5-10 minutes if you want. And if there's a failure for that transaction to complete and you alert on it, the hopes would be you find out, you fix it before it actually impacts an actual customer, so you're being proactive. But now you have the real user monitoring, and now you're getting the real user's experience. And you know what? You can be in a data center or a NOC and all the lights look green. But if the end user's experience is bad, if they're not happy with what their experience is, it doesn't matter. You might as well be down. So being able to understand that real user's experience and figuring out where that issue is, is it a problem on the server side, or maybe it's specific to a region, or specific even to a device. It's how am I performing? What are my real users' performance if I'm on a mobile device or I'm on a tablet? Or what if it's a specific browser is where my issue is? Well, being able to understand the actual real user's performance, get real insights down to scores, customer satisfaction scores based on some industry standards, it really gives you the full perspective, whether it be, again, the client side, which is the infrastructure, the application, the logs, and then you got the client side, which is the user's perspective. And whether you're getting simulated synthetic information about the user's experience, combining that with the real user, now you really do have comprehensive observability. So I'm going to go through these here fairly quickly so I can give Mike some time. Again, you're going to get all these slides. Matter of fact, the deck you're going to get is going to even have more information than I'm showing here. But as you can see, this breaks down the two major components of Pingdom. There's the synthetics that I've talked about and real user monitoring. And there's probe servers around the world. We do redundant tests, so we make sure before we send an alert that that alert is a real alert, whether it be looking at a component or looking at, for example, loading a page. Okay. Today's environment with images and videos, web pages can be fairly complex. And understanding if you have a slow loading page, again, anytime an application runs slow, if the page runs slow, the customer is going to bounce. They don't have any patience for that. So being able to understand, okay, how fast is this page loading? But not just that, break it down. Every element, step by step, as a page loads, how much time did that take? Pingdom will actually come out and tell you exactly what time is being spent every part of the way until a page is loaded. It even gives you a visualization, a timeline as a page loads. So between the real user monitoring and the synthetic monitoring, Pingdom is a very powerful availability and performance tool. On AppOptics, you've got infrastructure monitoring and application monitoring combined. So it's full stack. And we have customers that will use it just to monitor the infrastructure. And by the way, it's a SaaS product. It can monitor infrastructure applications in the cloud. It can manage on-prem. Okay. Just like, by the way, server and application monitor can monitor on-prem or in the cloud. But AppOptics is about monitoring custom applications. And most of you have some combination of off-the-shelf, the Office 365, SAP, whatever. But then you've got quite a few custom applications. So AppOptics is really a great tool that not only can help you from a single pane of glass, you can monitor the full stack, but you can drill down into the infrastructure. There's maps that make it easy for you to get, visibility across your entire infrastructure, whether it be servers or hosts or containers. It also gives you capability on the application side to start at the very highest level, and Mike's going to show you this, and you see all of the services and how they're related to each other, where you can drill down all the way down to the line of code. We also implemented things that make it easy, where AppOptics does the heavy lifting and points out to you exactly where the issues are, so you don't have to go and go through all the guesswork and the troubleshooting. And finally, with Loggly, again, a log management tool, infrastructure and application, lets you aggregate terabytes of data, makes it very easy to go through and search to find the specific issue you're looking for. It'll automatically do some parsing for you that really simplifies the whole search process. All four of these products are about optimizing the availability, the performance of your infrastructure and application. They all provide the capability to quickly identify when there's issues, so you can catch them early, identify what they are, remediate, and they all provide the capability to scale from the very smallest customer to the very largest, and then, of course, grow with you. Well, look, I've rambled on a little bit longer than I would have liked to, but that probably just set up the anticipation for Mike. What we're going to do now is I'm going to pass it over to Mike Morgan, and he's going to take you through the products. And again, I really encourage you, especially as you're going through the demonstration, fire off your questions into the Q&A, and we'll make sure we answer them all at the end of the session. It's all you, Mike.
Excellent. Thanks, Pete. And hey, everyone. This is Mike Morgan, sales engineer on the SolarWinds cloud products. So I'm just going to share my screen out now, and we're going to walk through a couple of products here. So starting off with AppOptics, and then through to Loggly, and then finally Pingdom. And as Pete stated, I mean, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll get to those at the end. Obviously, we have fairly limited time here, so I'm going to try and give each product maybe just shy of 10 minutes, so to give you an overview. But of course, if you would like a deeper dive, please let us know. We'd be happy to set something up. So first of all, we're going to start by looking at AppOptics. And as Pete stated, I mean, AppOptics is a platform for really monitoring the health of your environment and your applications, and really everything that exists between those two things. So just to kind of walk you through the dashboard here, we start off at the top corner with our list of services. This would be a list of custom applications that you wish to monitor. We give you a piece of instrumentation that you would deploy to these applications, and it will be able to pull metrics such as, you know, application response time, errors, give us an idea of what your database is doing, and really a ton of data that allows you to identify performance bottlenecks and issues inside your applications before they happen. In addition to monitoring these custom applications, you'll see we have some plugins in the top corner here. Plugins, these are going to be kind of off-the-shelf systems and services that we can integrate with natively, pull metrics from them into dashboards, alert based off the behavior of these various services. And this could be, you know, things like databases, web servers, container services, but then also PaaS products that you purchase from cloud vendors like Azure, AWS. We have native bindings with these services. We can pull down metrics from those, give you that visibility that you need. And then in addition to monitoring your custom apps and the services that support your custom apps, we're also going to be monitoring the hosts themselves, you know, CPU, memory, disk, all of those kinds of things from your from your virtual machines, your EC2 instances, your physical servers. We have all of that covered. And really, the goal to all of this is that we're able to pull metrics from all of these different sources right down into a single pane of glass. You'll see here, we've got a dashboard that we put together, just showing a combination of metrics across each one of these different areas. We have some system metrics here. We've got some application metrics here. We've got some metrics obtained by integrations underneath. And these views can be customized exactly as you see fit. We could filter this down to particular applications, particular environments. I mean, really the goal here is that, you know, all of the data that you need is in a single view. This can be shared with colleagues or customers alike so that everyone at a glance can see exactly what's going on. So to kind of dig into this in a bit more detail, we're just going to walk through the three areas that I just outlined here. And I'm going to start off just by looking at host data quickly. It's probably the most obvious one, very, very straightforward in what it's telling us. So we have an agent that you would deploy to your various EC2 instances, AWS, Azure VMs or physical servers, really anywhere that you can deploy this agent, we can collect data from. And once we do so, metrics like CPU, memory, disk, and network, amongst others, are going to be pulled in. So here we are looking at one of our host dashboards. We're able to filter this to really any combination of hosts that we see fit, be it a single host or maybe a number of hosts we can aggregate together on a single dashboard. For example, if you wanted to get perhaps a broader view of the health of a cluster of servers. So this is going to allow us to see metrics, again, from either a single server or a combination thereof. However, we can then start drilling down into individual servers in more detail via the host view. I can pick one out, see the metrics, identify particular metrics to do with CPU or memory or disk or whatever if I want to do that. And then underneath, also a breakdown of things like different applications running on this host. So I can see the apps by response time, request volume, and errors, and a breakdown of all the different processes running on this host. So, if there's a particular process you need to monitor closely, perhaps you need to make sure that your Java process isn't eating all your CPU or memory, or even alert if that Java process crashes altogether, then that's absolutely something we can do in AppOptics. Also, and this is kind of jumping ahead slightly, but just to give you a sneak peek, if we have the logs from your servers being forwarded into our Logly product, then you can just simply press this View Logs button. It will take me straight into my system logs for the host that I'm currently looking at. I can then browse and search those logs for this particular server. And I will get a closer look at Logly in a moment for sure. So in addition to monitoring system health, of course, again, we collect these metrics, we can alert based off this, build them into dashboards. We would probably want to start including metrics from these other services that support our environment as well. So, whatever applications that you're running, the chances are that it's probably speaking to a database, be it MS SQL or Oracle or MySQL or whatever. Perhaps it even runs behind a web server. Maybe it's running inside a container, and so on and so forth. And if that's the case, then the chances are that AppOptics has an integration that can hook into these services and monitor the health of them. So, for example, let's use let's say a container service as an example. Lots of folks here are looking to move their applications into containers using technologies like Docker and Kubernetes. So in these situations, we have integrations that can hook in natively with these services. You'll see here, looking at our Kubernetes dashboard, we can see the health of all of our containers, in this case, the Kubernetes control plane, how many pods and nodes have been stood up. This is also true for any of these other integrations. So be it something that you're running on premise, like a MySQL database, or something that's managed for you, like let's say a database service running in Azure or AWS. We have integrations for them all. We have pre-built dashboards for all of these things. You just simply need to turn them on, and then you would have access to this data. Furthermore, metrics are retained for 18 months. So if you need to, go and look at the last 60 minutes and compare that to an equivalent period 6 months ago, then that's absolutely fine. That data is retained there for you for comparative purposes. So for me, at least, the main part of AppOptics is actually going to be monitoring those custom applications that you're running in your environment. And by custom applications, I'm thinking applications that you have visibility into their inner workings. Think perhaps you build them internally, or you work with a vendor to maybe supply that application for your team or your customers, somewhere that you actually run this application and you have the capability of installing an agent to actually provide this monitoring. So we give you different agents for various different languages that your application might be written in. So things like Java, .NET, PHP, Python, Ruby, Go, and Node.js. And in most cases, you don't need to touch the code of your application to get this working. You simply deploy the agent to where the application is running, restart the app, and then we will start collecting this kind of data within a couple of minutes. So one more thing to add, this instrumentation and everything I'm showing you here gathered using the instrumentation is done so in the most lightweight way possible. This software has been designed to really not consume a ton of resources on your hosts. So you can run this in production environments. It's not going to slow everything down or cause performance issues itself. It can be absolutely confidently run in production. So before I jump right into one of my applications here, I want to just show you this application map. This will give me an overview of what my environment looks like. I can see all of the different services, databases, caches, and things like that talking to each other. Gives me that understanding of how these different elements are interacting and communicating with each other. If there's one part that I'm particularly interested in, I can select that. It shows me all of the links between these various components, and from there I can really kind of follow the flow of transactions between my applications. But if I want to drill into a single app, I can absolutely do so. I'm going to jump into one of my front-end presentation apps here. I can see at first a number of key metrics like response times, request volumes, error rates, what the CPU is doing across the hosts that are serving this application. It's really just giving me an at-a-glance view of what the health of this particular service is right now. I can also compare that against an equivalent period, a week, month, 6 months ago, whatever, just to give me a sense of, is this normal? Are things behaving themselves compared to how they were previously? I mean, this is a nice comparative view. And we also call out a number of suggestions as well. So just to give you a sense, if we've got like a database that's running slow, or perhaps things seem to be running slow because the CPU appears to be high, we can tell you that. We give you these hints along the top. So to delve in deeper, we have a number of tabs here that are really going to start providing more details, so I can get a breakdown of my entire application stack, where this time is being spent. Is there a database? Is it a backend API? All this tracing is distributed. So if we have a microservice-driven architecture with lots of APIs communicating with each other, we make it really, really easy to identify, if there's a particular software service that's running slow, such as this blue layer, this booking service, which is an internal API. I can immediately tell without even digging in any further, this is an area that is performing poorly. So we supply a number of other metrics on this page, and as much as I'd love to touch on all of them, we are running against the clock here. So I'm going to gloss over these, just other than to say that we have a number of other tabs along the top that really isolate certain types of behavior that you might want to dig into. Different URLs, remote transactions. I can dig into the database, queries, caches, and exceptions. What I really want to get you to is our heat map view. From here, we can see individual traced requests. I can see these individual transactions that my users are making against my site. I mean, this again is not synthetic data. This is real interactions with my users. I can select some that are of interest to me. And then from here, I can drill down into individual transactions. And this is where we start getting to the more detailed view of what is happening in a single request. I can see, for example, that a request took this long. I can see some metadata about, what the status was, the method, the transaction. I can see the URL here, when this request was made by one of my users. And it also shows me that, in fact, this amount of time was spent, in this case, on remote service calls, downstream API calls. And then when I drill right into the trace itself, the more detailed view, I can see each call and event that occurred within a single request across all parts of my application stack. What database queries were being executed, what remote services were being called, what caches were being hit. All of this data is summarized here. Any of these spans on this timeline, I can click on. I can see exactly what was happening. I have a summary underneath of database queries and different operations, so I can see, again, at a glance, even if I'm not super familiar with the app, where this time is being spent, which queries are being executed. I can see at the code level where this time is being spent. So we give you a complete, breakdown of functions and methods, the entire call stack for this particular request and the percentage of time and where it's being spent, including right down to the line of code here. And then finally, to help segue us into our Logly product, if these application logs are being sent into Logly, then I can simply press this search logs button, and this will take me straight into my logging tool, and it will return a list of log messages that relate specifically to that one request. Here's my trace, here's my metrics, here's all my events. Now here is the log messages that relate to that one specific request. So, as application guys, I'm sure you've spent more than enough time in your working lives digging through application logs, trying to figure out what went wrong, where the errors are, like what does this mean in, there's so much stuff in this log, it's really hard to get a sense of what was happening. Well, in this case, we can actually give you this request level context by injecting an ID into your log messages. The AppOptics instrumentation will handle that for you. Allows you to really bridge these two completely separate areas of monitoring. So now that we're in Loggly, I want to quickly talk about this. So Loggly is a log collection and aggregation platform. We can send all of our system logs to here from any number of different sources, applications, and systems. They can be collected in one place, and we're able to sort, filter, search, and alert based off what we're finding in those log messages. So the great thing about Loggly is, as soon as the log messages are submitted in, we will automatically pass the values of those log messages out into key value pairs like we're seeing here. And what this allows us to do is start interacting with these log messages straight away. We can start clicking on these things to start doing filtering. So if I just simply click on these fields, you'll see they're added to my search bar up here. And then boom, I now have a search that I can search through all my logs for those particular key value pairs. Makes it really, really easy if there's some particular log message that's interesting to you to start, pulling out similar log messages without having to type out, complex search strings. Although, of course, you absolutely have that capability in Loggly as well. Furthermore, it doesn't have to be simply kind of finding log messages and clicking on the values. We also have this source explorer, field explorer, sorry, that you can then start exploring the log values within. So, for example, if I know I have Apache logs or Java logs or any other sort of log format that's recognized, we can simply click through to these, see all of the various keys that were written into these log messages. Let's say I want to, let's look at this one, request URI. So in this case, it's showing me all the different values that were extracted for this type of log message. I can just simply click on them to filter. And straight away, it's going to create these filters that would allow me to, without digging through my log messages at all, I can pull out, a filter of log messages that are going to be of interest to me. So this is great. Not just simply for being able to, pick out a list of log messages like this. That's fantastic, obviously, but we can use this to then start treating logs almost as if they're metrics. And what I mean by that is this chart right here is going to show me the distribution of these particular, filtered log messages over time. But let's say I want to create a chart from this. I can simply do that. I just change the way this is visualized, like so. I now have a chart that shows me these 3 time series. In each of these lines is actually the frequency of each of these various different log values that I filtered down by. So, if there's a particular kinds of behavior, perhaps like an error message or something like that you would really like to be able to create a chart from, different kinds of exceptions or warnings or really anything at all, then you have this ability to, not just simply search and look at those messages, but actually, visualize it like this so you can get a sense of, how frequently these log messages are being written. And being able to create these charts on the fly, very, very useful. But ultimately, what we want to be able to get you to is you can then start creating these comprehensive dashboards from these metrics, much in the same way as we can build dashboards in AppOptics that show us APM and system metrics pulled from the hosts themselves. We're doing something very, very similar in Loggly, but instead, this is going to be using messages that are written from your logs. Finally, and again, glossing over, additional functionality here, I'd love to be able to show you another time. But I just want to call out that, of course, this does include alerting capabilities. So if your logs are writing particular messages that you want to be alerted on, and by that, a good example would be error messages or, security messages or really anything at all that you definitely want to know about if you start seeing a bunch of them in your logs, then you can absolutely do that. We have comprehensive alerting ability within. That's going to cover things like just simply, let me know if a particular message appears a bunch of times. But you can also do more complex things like, alert if that we detect an anomaly in the number of messages. If the number of 500 messages, greater than it usually is, possibly, and then we can alert you based off that. And of course, that would be alerting to something like email, but then also other endpoints such as Slack or webhooks. So the final thing I want to show you here today is Pingdom. Now, Pingdom is another application performance monitoring tool. So the difference between this and AppOptics, so whereas AppOptics is providing application performance data from the internal of your application, so again, really starts from the moment your application server receives the request, and we can give you a ton of data about as it's processing and the environment inside your data center. Pingdom really covers the opposite side of the story. So Pingdom is going to be showing us what is happening from an external perspective. So think in terms of how a user will be experiencing your application as they're trying to access it from their web browser. And to do this, we have 4 unique modules to leverage. So the most simple of which is the Uptime module, which is really going to, well, as the name implies, just simply tell you whether your application is up. We go a bit more advanced with a page speed check that will tell us a bit more data about the various other elements on the page, images and things like that. Again, I can show you in a bit more detail in a moment. Transactions, which is going to simulate complex user interactions. So think in terms of, a script of actions that a user would perform, log in, click around, add an item to the cart and things like that. And then finally, a real user monitoring check. Just to kind of show you how your users are experiencing your site. So again, being wary of time, maybe I'll try and get through this in 5 minutes here. I'm just going to give you a sneak preview of each of these modules. So firstly, Uptime, again, very, very simple check. It just simply repeatedly hits your website every 60 seconds, and it's going to tell you whether it's up or not. Now, I say website, that's going to be obviously the most common use. You would give it a URL and it will check that continuously. But these checks can also be run against things like API endpoints. It could be run against network endpoints. You can do arbitrary TCP and UDP ping checks and things like that. But the most common case is going to be just simply pointing this check at a web page URL and letting it check it continuously. So in the event that the site does go down, then we do give you a bunch of metrics to support that. And that's going to include measurements around how fast the site is responding. So I can see here a number of seconds that it took the site to actually provide a response. And in the event that this does actually break, we do give you a root cause analysis that will tell you why we think it's down. So in this case, it was a 500 error from our server. We double check it from a second location. As Pete said, we do a lot of false positive checking in Pingdom. So when you get that alarm at 3 in the morning, you want to make sure it's genuine. We're very confident that that's the case. And then this report gives you a bunch of information such as, do we believe it's on the network? Are we seeing an issue on the server? Really everything that we can derive is provided in this root cause analysis report. To go a bit deeper, we have a page speed check. The page speed check is simply going to check the site repeatedly, and rather than just being focused on uptime, instead we're going to be looking at the load time for all of the page elements on the site. So we give you this breakdown, a complete waterfall view of the page as it's rendering. Each asset, we can see how long it took, where that time was being spent, and a breakdown of all of their header information for each element. So, if someone's updating a large image on the site or makes a code change or something like that that results in, perhaps a lump of JavaScript being way too big or taking a long time to download, then the page speed check will absolutely keep that in mind and be able to let you know if that's happening. We do provide a ton of other metrics just to give some insight into where this time is being spent and what these assets are. The transaction check is a more advanced check that provides a script of actions that you can then monitor this site with. So it's not just simply monitoring a single page, but instead monitoring a number of different steps on a page to mimic a user's workflow. So, if you're running something like an e-commerce site, think in terms of a user going to the front page, adding something to the cart, clicking through to the checkout, and going through the credit card process. If that process were to break, then that's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you engagement from your users. We certainly want to avoid that. So using the transaction check, we can very, very quickly and easily, using our built-in wizard, create these scripts and allow you to monitor these workflows. And in the event that they do break, we see a complete chart here that shows me each of the steps along the way. I can see how long the outage was for, how long it took, and when things do break, it again will give me this report that shows me, exactly at which step it broke and why we think it broke. So again, once you get that page at 3 a.m. telling you your site's down, you're not flying in the dark. You have something to work from. So finally, the real user monitoring capability. And for me, at least, this is the bit that ties all of this together. I mean, we're already running these synthetic checks against my site here. I can see, that things are running well, or in fact, they're not running well. Perhaps we would then have some sort of issue that we see in the transaction check. Things are running slowly. I need the answer. Why is this affecting, or how is this affecting my real users? And that's what the real user monitoring capability will tell you. All you would need to do is simply put a piece of JavaScript onto your page, and as that page is loaded, we will receive a small amount of data about that user experience that we can collate together and give you this data. So in this case, we're going to be looking at our own little Pingdom live map tool that we're running this JavaScript beacon. I can see there's 10 active sessions. Here's the average load time. I drill into the data. It gives me, again, this real-time breakdown of what my users are doing right now, how many there are, the load time, AppDex score. I can see the distribution of users on a map here and their experience. We have some data around page loads here and, where this time is being spent, some time series. But where I really want to get you to is just this performance breakdown. Again, this is going to show me the page performance for my real users, but then as close as I can hope to get from an outside perspective, I can see even, how much time was spent waiting for the page to appear, how much time was spent waiting for the page to complete rendering, how much time was spent on the network or on the back end. All of these metrics, again, pulled in via our run beacon so that you can help yourself with your debugging process, understand how these performance issues, again, that we see in the synthetic checks are affecting our real users. So again, being wary of time, we've got a couple of minutes left here. I want to leave sufficient time for some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing now and just hand back to Pete.
Thank you, Mike. That's great. And, we still have about 6 minutes left, and we do have a pretty good list of questions. The one I want to address first on the Q&A, and again, keep your questions coming. There's one question about, I'm always tech support, whether it's a third party or trying to prove to these folks that we have an issue. Can be a challenge. And even within your own organization, there's finger pointing. This is the problem. That's the problem. One of the things that APM solves is that very issue. So the question, Mike, here was really, how can an APM help you, get the folks you're sharing this information to listen to that, yeah, this is really the problem. And, I don't know if you want to go back you want to just talk to it, but I was thinking of like the root cause summaries that really spell it out, that you pass that on. But if you want to just talk to how to use any one of these products, whether it's within a team across organizations or a third party, to say, hey, here's the proof, there's a problem here, go fix it.
Yeah, for sure. And, with these tools, it's always useful to know what is the problem, but then also what's not the problem as well. I mean, this is, it's a case of being able to use something like AppOptics to be able to, see if it's like the database that's running slow, or if, we're seeing errors in the logs or something. But in the same way, we can use this as a process of elimination. I'm sure that you guys have certainly been in situations where something goes wrong. everyone automatically blames the network. It's always the network's fault first. And, using these sets of tools, it allows you to quantify that and validate whether that's actually the case. I mean, if the app is reported running slow, we can look in AppOptics, we can see that, yes, in fact, the APM instrumentation is reporting that the app is running slow. It doesn't look like it is the network. And, similarly, if we want to dig into, things like the database, is that running slow? Are we running into issues with back-end services? There's a vast, expansive data that we're collecting here from all these different sources. And, for me, at least, when we're trying to, debug, our own issues, we monitor all of our stuff using AppOptics, as I'm sure you can imagine. Having this stuff together on collected dashboards that everyone has access to and everyone can view. I mean, it really helps correlate. We can get to kind of the root cause real quick and brings that mean time to resolution right down.
Cool. So I got a couple of specific questions here. One person was asking about the agent. Does it run on each kube cluster member, the VM, the container, etc.?
Yeah, so the APM instrumentation would run inside the container with the application. So the APM instrumentation it's basically like a language module or library that runs in the same process as the application. So you would just stand that up inside the container alongside your application. And certainly if you needed more details around the specifics of that, I'd be happy to elaborate. With regards to the actual agent bit that reports like host metrics and like pulls data from Kubernetes and Docker, we give you a containerized version of that if you want to run it in a containerized environment. So in the case of like Kubernetes, you would just simply run the containerized agent on the actual Kubernetes master, and then also drop it onto each of your nodes as well. And then it will be able to read these metrics. So, again, would be happy to go into more depth on that if you want more information on another call. But, yeah, we have a couple of strategies that you can use to really kind of get the agents in place in the most kind of straightforward way possible.
Okay, so I'm gonna go over a couple more questions, but we're not going to get to them all. So we will follow up in an email that covers everything. But there was one more question, and this came in while you were showing the integration, going from a trace directly into the associated logs. The question is, how did you get to Loggly? And maybe you could talk about how you get to all the APM products between each other.
Oh, sorry, Peter, you cut out there. Could you just repeat the end of that question again, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the question was, how do you get to Loggly? It came in while you were showing the integration.
Oh yeah, sorry. Absolutely. So all of these products do share a centralized authentication system. So, if you have an account in AppOptics, you can just segue straight over to Loggly or Pingdom. That's absolutely fine. There are some additional ways that you can configure to integrate these things. But once you're in there, I mean, it should be just simply a case of just navigating, using the integrations that we provide between things like APM and Loggly and so on and so forth. So there's those workflows are built straight in with minimal configuration.
Okay, so we've got like a minute left. I've got a couple more things to talk about, so I'm going to apologize. There's some questions we're not getting to, but I will respond collectively to the group. So all the questions that are here, we'll make sure we get answered. I really do appreciate everyone's taking their time. If you have any questions, if you're interested in learning more about any of these solutions, how they work together with other SolarWinds products, in the slide deck that you're getting, you got all sorts of capabilities to reach out, whether you go into the government specific FLAC groups or all these other areas. You can reach out specifically to our sales folks. So please make sure when you get your slide deck, know that you've got this here. The other thing I wanted to share with you is in your slide deck, when you get it, you'll have lots of links to other materials. There's some thought leadership white papers and research briefs. There's some videos. We've got some more information specific to the individual products we talked about. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that you've got all of this resource. And again, you will get all of that with the slide deck probably later this week. So I apologize. I went a little long, so I cut short Mike a little bit and didn't get to all your questions. But I hope you found the combination of our presentation and demonstration insightful enough to think, hey, this is something that's important. APM is probably something that's important regardless of where you're looking. However, I hope you take a look at SolarWinds because we do have a fairly comprehensive set of offerings. That being said, I appreciate everyone's time today, and we'll call it a day. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.